Hi, I'm Karlin Borisenko. In early 2020, I was the knitting Democrat who accidentally went viral on the internet for going to a Trump rally and then left the party. I became the conservative darling, was on all the shows, traveled around the country, and then realized that conservatives were no better than Democrats. If there's one thing that I've learned, it's that both political tribes are two sides of the same coin. But it wasn't all bad. On my journey, I became obsessed with understanding the woke ideology and the culture war. I broke the story of the city of Seattle doing segregated training with its employees.
How bad has this stuff become? The city of Seattle has now put out, I'm not kidding you, this is according to Dr. Karlin Borisenko, who's an organizational psychologist. The city of Seattle asked its white employees to voluntarily spend a day off in a training about their internalized racial superiority.
I broke the story that led to the first ever federal lawsuit against critical race theory in the schools. I broke the Coke Be Less White story, one of the biggest anti-woke stories of all time. It got over 30 million views. Coca-Cola's corporate headquarters even had to change their outgoing voicemail.
Throughout the past few days, you may have seen inaccurate reporting on the content of our recently launched diversity, equity, and inclusion training program.
I exposed the schools in Burlington, Vermont for grooming middle school children live on the internet. They called me an unwoke cult leader for that. And the Vermont Human Rights Commission slandered me publicly as being a hate channel. I even got called a hero in Breitbart for exposing that the Washington Post was writing a hit piece on Christopher Rufo. I have broken story after story after story about what's going on in the public schools, from Cambridge, Massachusetts, to autistic sex education, to the Department of Education in Michigan, literally training teachers all over the state how to groom children. I wrote a book called Actively Unwoke, the ultimate guide for fighting back against the woke insanity in your life. I host a podcast all about fighting back, and I'm downloading all of my knowledge to you on my Substack, karlin.substack.com. The world is a crazy place. We are literally surrounded by cults on all sides. On this show, we're going to do a deep dive into all aspects of the culture war, and I will show you the dark, dystopian underbellies on both sides. Here are the commitments I'll make to you. I will always tell you the truth. I will always bring you receipts. And if you stick with me, I promise you will see the world differently. Welcome to the cult. Please mount that like button for me and subscribe if you feel so inclined. Happy Friday, guys. Welcome to the cult. You know, it just occurred to me that when I started doing happy hour streams over 2 years ago, I never actually thought to number them. And I have been numbering my official episodes of the cult, and maybe I should go back and figure out just how many happy hour streams I've done, because it's definitely over 100 now, because I've been doing happy hour for over 2 years. And I would kind of like to see what episode of happy hour this is. But guys, happy hour is a special stream that we do on Fridays at 5 p.m. where we kick back, we have a beverage or two, and we watch a real live woke training from start to finish. We watch the boring bits, we watch the cringy bits. We do not just watch the clips that are taken out of context that are posted on libs of TikTok. We watch everything from start to finish. And I firmly believe that people who attend happy hour on a regular basis know more about what is going on the woke left and what their plans are than anyone else on the internet. And if you combine that with Socialism Saturdays, which we do on Saturdays at 6 p.m., you guys are pretty much the most informed people about the left on the internet that aren't actually on the left. Congratulations for that. It's a bit of a scary thought, but I stick by that statement. I really don't know of any other group that understands the left as well as we understand them, that are able to articulate what the left is doing, that are able to understand how the left is thinking, how they're showing up in the world, what strategies they're going to be doing next. We really are at least like 2 years ahead of normal people. And so while that is a scary thought, I also think we should occasionally give ourselves a pat on the back, because the only way that we got to where we are is by actually sitting our butts down for several hours every single week and listening to what they have to say, not to disrupt it, not to prove them wrong because they can't hear us talking to them, but to understand where they're at right now and where they're going. Well, and today, guys, you know, we're going to see how this stream today is going to go. I'm not so sure how this is going to go. This is a little bit of a different kind of stream than we usually watch for happy hour. Let me show you what we're going to be watching today. It is from an organization in Eastern Pennsylvania whose YouTube channel I happened to stumble upon. It is called the Eastern Pennsylvania Trans Equity Project. And we can actually see they've got a whole bunch of woke shit on these channels. And so they've got all sorts of stuff. They've got stuff about advocating for the LGBTQ legislation, demystifying insurance, yoga, transition in the workplace. They got all sorts of stuff about the LGBTQ. But what we're gonna watch today is a presentation for people who are married or in a relationship with someone who has since come out and decided that they're trans and are going to transition. And the description of this presentation is, well, a little interesting. Being in a relationship with a person who is transitioning can be exhilarating, confusing, and scary all at the same time. This workshop will offer partners an opportunity to address their often overlooked needs and fears, as well as their celebrations. Dia Maynard uses her experience in teaching to present workshops around the world to empower the voices of partner of TGNB. I think that's transgender and non-binary. Parents, families of TGNB children, educators of TGNB students. She is the author of the reflective workbook for partners of transgender people, Your Transition as Your Partner Transitions. Now, listen, I have no problem with people being trans. I don't personally care if you're trans. I don't personally care if you're non binary. I don't care about, yes, it's so good that 45 people before us have watched it. I truly don't care if you're trans. Live your best life, man. I will say this, though. It irks me in a not insignificant way. Well, a couple things irk me in a non insignificant way. Number one, why are there all of a sudden so many people in relationships, possibly long term marriages, that are coming out as trans all of a sudden? That seems a little fishy to me. I'm like, why is that happening? Because trans people statistically are a really small percent of the population. So, why is there a necessity for a book and a workshop series specifically to target the partners of trans people who decide to transition while they're in the relationship? That's question number one. Question number two is this: why in the ever loving hell did you get married to someone that you were not honest with? I don't care if you're trans. Makes no difference to me at all. But I think it is incredibly, 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 incredibly selfish to enter into a marriage with someone that you are not being honest with about who you are. Because conceivably, you knew you were trans before you got in the relationship. You knew you were trans when you got married. It is incredibly unfair to do that to someone. I'm sorry. It just is. And I wonder what type of advice they're going to be giving to people in this presentation who, I mean, maybe they're just dating them. I think dating is different than marriage. But, I thought about when I found this, when I and by the way, I don't think the excuse of "they were scared" is good enough. That is a great excuse that someone makes when they've never been married, okay? When I found this presentation yesterday, I kinda asked myself, I was like, "What if my husband decided to come out as trans. Not that I think he ever would. He likes his beard way too much for that. I mean, I suppose that doesn't matter anymore. But like I was like, what if Victor woke up one day and decided to announce that he was trans and he's been trans this entire 12 years that we've been married, and he just needs to go off and live his best life. And I was like, I wouldn't stay married to him because the person I married would be dead. The person I married would be worse than dead. The person I married would be just snuffed out of existence like he never was. And if Victor decided to transition into Victoria, again, he would never do this, I don't think. God, fingers crossed, knock on wood. But if he did, he wouldn't be the person I married anymore. And I think it's easy for people on the outside to say, you fell in love with the person. It shouldn't matter. No, it does matter. It absolutely does matter. I am sorry. It absolutely matters. If I wanted to be a lesbian, I would have been a lesbian. God knows lesbians effing love me. A lot of lesbians really wish I was one. And even more than that, it would have been a betrayal. And it would have been a constant lie throughout the entire course of the marriage. And I don't think that people who are not married can really understand that. Because, marriage is not just about like having the sparkly ring on your finger, right? Like it is about it's about sharing your life with someone. And I don't mind when people have non-traditional relationships. I don't really care. If you want to have like a polyamorous throuple and everyone has agreed to that and everyone is honest about it and everyone is just above board, more power to you, man. I know people in polyamorous marriages. They love it. They're perfectly happy. I have no issue with that. The point is not that people are not allowed to change. They are. The point is that you built the entire relationship on a lie, and now you're expecting the person that you lied to for God knows how long to just overlook the entire lie that you told, to give up everything they know about what this relationship is and who they actually are with, and just adapt to you. I think it's incredibly selfish. I really, really do. And it's not that I don't feel for people who find themselves in this position, because I understand why they would be like nervous to tell the person that they're with that they're trans and that they're going to transition. I totally get it. But you damn well should have thought of that before you entered into a relationship with another person that was meant to be a long-term relationship with one type of person. And now all of a sudden you've changed the entire set of rules and you expect the person just to adapt to you. I don't think it's fair. Am I wrong? Am I misguided? I feel like I'm a pretty open-minded person. Like, I can deal with a lot as long as you're honest about it. But this? No, no. I think it's really selfish. I think it's really childish. And I think it's extremely inconsiderate to expect another person to go along with it. So I'm going to be really interested in what their advice is in this presentation for partners who are in this type of situation. So we got some other stuff before we get into that, though, guys. Please make sure you mount that like button if you have not already. Of course, I just want to remind everyone, please make sure you are subscribed to my Substack, which is Carlyn, KARLYN.substack.com. I have a whole bunch of Substacks, but this is my main one. This is where I post the best content. And make sure you check out that article that I posted last night, which I had a realization last night. You know how they, there's been a lot of talk about, should the LGB separate from the T, in terms of like trans people are fundamentally different than like lesbian, gay men, and like bisexuals. Should they separate that out? I don't think that's what should happen, because the problem in this whole affair is not actually the T. The problem is the Q. And we've been talking about this a lot lately, where queer, to be queer, is a political act. It is a political statement. So I mean, you think that the T is disparate from the LGB, the Q is on a whole another playing field. And the problem is that the Q are actually the ones that are causing all the problems. It is the queer activists, and people confuse these things. You do not have to be trans to be queer, and you do not have to be queer if you're trans. And this is something that's a really, really nuanced take. This is something that I don't think a lot of people understand the difference, that not all trans people are queer activists. And queer activists, you do not have to be trans. You don't even have to be gay in order to be a queer activist. That's something I just like people to think about. I want to request people read that article. We can discuss it the next time I do a stream. As you guys know, I will be off all next week on my formal streaming schedule because I'm going to be at PorkFest next week. And so I'm going to be in the middle of the woods. There's going to be substances that are going to be imbibed. There's going to be relaxing that is done, and I may not be streaming next week. It really depends on what the internet situation is, but I will definitely not be doing my 5 p.m. stream. If I do stream, it's going to be later on at night when like there's just more internet at night, to be honest about it. And so I definitely want to encourage everyone to read the article. I do also anticipate continuing to post on my Substack while I'm away at PorkFest. And so if you want the latest updates before I come back the following week and start up my normal streaming schedule again, please make sure you are subscribed. And if you do want to support the work I'm doing, you can sign up for $5 a month, $50 a year. You will get all sorts of exclusive perks, to include 2 weekly Zoom calls that we do every single week on Mondays and Wednesdays, to include access to my supporter Discord. And if you get access to my supporter Discord, you get to join us for movie night. And movie night this week is going to be Minority Report. We are watching Minority Report in the supporter Discord at 8 p.m. On Sunday. And so that's going to be great. Is Victor going to PorkFest? Victor is going to PorkFest, but he's coming up later in the week. So Victor, I think, the plan right now, who knows what might happen. The plan is for Victor to come up on Thursday. I'm going up on Monday. He's going to come up on Thursday and spend the rest of the time there. So that's going to be great. James Jones, have fun at PorkFest. Have a substance for me. Look, I got a pink disposable. I like, look at this thing. Bot, look at this. It's pink. I've got all sorts of substances. I just came back from these substance dispensers. I have a lot of substances. It's going to be a fun week. Okay. And of course, there are all sorts of substances that you can get at PorkFest too, which is going to be great. So I will try not to be on the internet when I'm imbibing such substances, but we don't need to talk about that anymore right now. Let's see. What else do I have to talk about today? That's pretty much it, except, of course, the beer. So, guys, I did actually go to the beer store today, and I got a whole bunch of beer, but most of it's not cold yet because most of it I'm bringing up to PorkFest. But I have 3 beers that were in the fridge that are cool, and as is our happy hour tradition, I'm going to tell you about the beer I got, and you guys get to vote on which one I drink first. So we're starting today with, this is actually one I got a couple weeks ago, and I didn't drink it on stream, but I drank it afterwards, and it's so effing good. This is so good. This is from Tripping Animals Brewing, which is one of my new favorite breweries, and it is called Strawberry Pow. And it is a soda-inspired sour ale with strawberries, and it's got a cool can. I love this color of pink. That's possibly my favorite color of pink. I used to hate pink, to be honest, and now I've come around to pink in my later years. But that is Strawberry Pow. That is a strawberry soda ale. Next one we have is also strawberries. Crispy asks, if you do not smoke pot and do not drink, should you never go to PorkFest? No, you can come to PorkFest. There's like a sober caucus at PorkFest. So there are plenty of people at PorkFest that are perfectly sober. No drinking, no weed, no any of that. So no, anyone can come to PorkFest, and they're definitely, but if you want to imbibe substances in the woods, you can imbibe substances in the woods, but you don't have to. That's the whole idea of voluntarism. All right, the next one. Look at this pretty can. Again, I'm a very big fan of like pretty cans that I can collect. And this is from Barreled Souls Brewing, which is in Saco, Maine. There's another strawberry one. This is called Strawberry Sour Puff Girls, which is strawberry ale with strawberry and marshmallow. So strawberry and marshmallow is our strawberry sour puff girls, and not to be confused with Strawberry Pow, which is strawberry soda inspired ale. And then this last one, I'm a little scared of this one, if I'm honest about it. I'm a little scared. I don't know what to think. I've never had this brewery before. This is from Drecker Brewing. I'm not sure exactly where they are, but they look very Viking. And this is called Brains. I can tell Bot is already voting for this one. And this is an ale with pineapple, orange, raspberry, goldenberry, sea salt, lactose, vanilla beans. It is a double fruit smoothie sour. Let's see. Pineapple, more pineapple, orange, more orange, raspberry, more raspberry, goldenberry, more goldenberry, sea salt, lactose, vanilla beans. So there's a lot of crazy shit in this one. And they called it Brains. So those are our choices for today. I think I know exactly which one you guys are going to vote for. Poll is in the chat. Let me know which one you want me to drink. And in the meantime, please make sure you have mounted that like button for me. Again, we do happy hour every Friday at 5 p.m., except next week because I'm going to be at Pork Fest next week. And so you guys will just have to have a week off of watching Woke training. I know you're all completely devastated at this development. All right. Which one did you guys pick? And was it Brains? It was Brains, obviously. Jesus Christ, you guys are so predictable. I'm starting to feel pressure when I'm going to the craft beer store because sometimes I'm like, maybe I just want a boring Belgian today. Maybe I just want a plain stout today. Maybe I just want like a white ale or like a saison or something like that, something boring that isn't like flavorful and colorful. And then I'm like, no, I have to deliver the goods to my audience. Jeez. I did see at the beer store. Today. You guys know how I hate IPAs, and I will never drink an IPA again if I can possibly help it. Today at the beer store, I saw an IPA with broccoli. Like, who thought that was a good idea? An IPA with broccoli? Are you kidding me? All right, let's see how this Brains beer looks. Please don't be an IPA in disguise. I feel like this is the type of brewery that would put a lot of hops in something just because they could. Oh, it's very goldeny. Let's see. Cheers, everyone. Happy Friday. If you're drinking something, let us know what you're drinking in the chat. I do have one more super chat to take from Naruto. Sorry, Naruto, I missed it. I'm still flabbergasted by why Laura Loomer thought that tweet about Gavin Newsom's wife last night was a good idea. I cannot see inside the mind of Laura Loomer, my friend. I cannot see inside the mind of Laura Loomer at all. Cheers, everyone. Let's see. It definitely has pineapple. It's not bad. Not bad at all. Definitely a smoothie, though. Definitely tastes like a sour ale. All right, guys, we are watching a presentation from a woke training place in Eastern Pennsylvania all about what to do when your partner decides that they're trans. Let's get this party started.
Uses her expertise in teaching to present workshops around the world to empower the voices of the partners of trans and gender non-binary people and the parents and families of trans and non-binary children and the educators of trans students. She is the author of the Reflective Workbook for Partners and Transgender People, Your Transition as your partner transitions, and she'll be hosting a conference for the spouses and partners of trans folk later this year. Tonight, she'll be working through some of the exercises from her book while providing some much needed guidance you can use while on your journey as your partner of
I
a
wonder
trans
how
and
many people
non-binary
were
individual.
watching this.
So with that, I'm turning the event over to you, Dee. Welcome, Dee. We're so happy that you're here.
Thank you, Bethany. Thanks so much for this invitation. I'm so excited to be here today. And I like cake and pie and dumplings, just for the record. A great way to start off, makes me hungry right away. So the name of this workshop presentation is Your Transition as Your Partner Transitions. And yes, I am DM Maynard. I use she, her, hers pronouns. And I just want, before I start, I think it's very important that people understand that sometimes when we talk about things that are hard, for some people, the topic we're talking about could be difficult or challenging right now, that if we say anything or I say anything that's triggering, please feel free to know that your mental health and the way you feel is most important, because sometimes we forget about our own self-care. So maybe it might be best for you to shut off for a moment, take a deep breath, come back on, or view the rest of it later at a time that feels comfortable for you.
If you're triggered by her talking about how you should cope with your partner announcing that they're trans, then can you imagine how triggered these people might be to actually find out that their partner had been lying to them for God knows how long about who they are?
I would like to let you know that this is the second part of the title of the book that I wrote, which we can go to the next slide if you'd like. It's called The Reflective Workbook for Partners of Transgender People, Your Transition as Your Partner Transitions. And I'm an educator, as you mentioned. I taught in the classroom for more than 30 years. This is my first love. I think it is an honor to teach in any capacity.
I feel very
satiated
that this person was a teacher
for more than 30 years.
for 30 years.
And my spouse transitioned after us being together for more than around 17 years. And I identify as a partner of a trans person. And after
Autumn, I'm still waiting for my Koch brothers money.
Some conferences, I started taking notes and writing things down about some of the questions that people were asking me, and I was formulating ideas for a workbook. And I'm happy to say that Jessica Kinsey Publishers were gracious enough to publish my book. So I am a professional author now, and we can use the next slide. And so what happened, what evolved at the first workbook became, once parents were hearing about the first book, many spoke to me, because as an educator, I was going to some parents' open parent and family.
It did kind of turn into The Color of a Brain, didn't it? A little bit.
Learned about the first workbook and were using it and said, I only wish we had one for ourselves. And so then
good job, then.
Spoke with my publisher, and then the second book, The Reflective Workbook for Parents and Families of Transgender and Non-Binary Children, Your Transition as Your Child Transitions Came to Be. And as an educator, and I know you are too, Bethany, we know the importance of this type of book in the classroom and for school districts and school systems. It's called The Reflective Workbook for Teachers and Support Staff of Trans and Non-Binary Students. Your school's transition as your students transition. So we can go to the next slide. Oh, that's my information. Feel free, I will email you back. dmmaynardworkbook@gmail.com, and you can go to the next slide. So let me explain how this all came about. I when I learned that my partner needed to transition, I didn't know
Trans widow.
what to do. I didn't know who to turn to. I didn't know how it was going to affect my life, my partner's life, or our life together. And so I started doing research and trying to look for books and different types of resources to help me navigate my spouse's transition. And I mostly found memoirs. I found most things focusing on the person in transition, which is fantastic and very necessary. But I couldn't find anything that helped the partner sort out and navigate the transition for themselves. And so after presenting so often, the people that I presented workshops for, which were all around the world, I decided, as I mentioned, to compile a lot of the questions, and then I had lots of exercises, and then I had people telling me their stories, so I wanted to include that. And so I thought, let me see if I can put this into some type of format that would be really make it easier for partners to be able to explore their own journey during this process. And so they can take this resource and bring it into the privacy of their home, or use it with a therapist, or use it with their partner. So I ask partners the topics that matter the most to them, and they discuss these main topics: unexpected and confused. When people come to my workshops or have
Sin is more of a
work with
scavenger
me,
than Bot is today.
like
Thank
through
you, Sin.
interviews, and group sessions, really, too. I'm not a therapist, but people sometimes conjugate. After
I'm
the
not a
workshop, when we
therapist,
talk
but I'm
about
going to
things
pretend
together
I'm a
as group,
therapist to help you come
they
to
would
grips
really
with your
talk
partner's
about, especially in the
transition.
early stages, that they might have been, some of the things were unexpected to them, and they were a little confused about what this meant for them.
Excuses, Bot.
And they
Oh,
had
it's
a
got to be
lot
on
of
point.
questions. So the second chapter really focuses a lot on this. The first chapter explains a lot about the book, the setup, and what to do. The third chapter is who are you? It discusses pronouns, how partners may feel about that, about names, chosen names, the pronouns that a person uses to identify themselves, and how that learning all of that for themselves works, and also about different artifacts that a person, as they're transitioning or in part of their transition process, might ask a partner or spouse to please take down, no longer show, be visible. And for many partners, that can sometimes be very painful and hard, and other times certain things, or altogether, it could be simple. So this type of discussion really really requires a lot of communication between partners. Grief may apply. There are some people who don't grieve, but there are partners that do grieve or are going through different parts of grieving. I use a lot of information from based on Elizabeth Kubler-Ross and David Kessler's work. So we talked a lot about that in the book. About other topics that were important is information about medically and socially transitioning and how a person feels about that, and what role they may or might not play as their partner is transitioning. And their partner may not transition medically, they may transition socially, they may do medically, not socially, they may not transition in any visible way. However, it's really important to talk about the options.
They may not transition in any visible way. Then what are they transitioning to?
And have communication with that, how to come out to family and friends. So when these chapters occur, there's all different pieces to this. There is no one way that fits everybody. It gives you options and talks about different things that you might want to process. And so we talk about coming out to family members and friends and different ways to do it, and a timeline, and lots of what exercises do with that. And then we talk about whether you want to come out at work or not come out at work, and why you would come out at work, and when, and to whom would you come out to work. Talk about all the different types of documents that could be changed, and who's going to change them, and how that process is going to happen, the awareness of all of this, how you deal with insurances sometimes, I don't give specifics on which insurances, specific ones, but more how to talk to people on the phone when you're inquiring about the information. I wrote scripts to help you be able to navigate that when you're making phone calls about it. Talk about the gender markers change, possible change, and also very important, the loss and gain of privilege, and how this affects everybody individually.
The loss
whether
and gain of
may lose
privilege.
a community that you are
That means if you transition from being a man to a woman, you lose privilege. But if you transition from being a woman to a man, you gain male privilege.
close to, whether it is an LGBTQ community, whether it is a religious community, it can be losing privileges as far as job, career. It can be in a specific pertaining to race, feeling safe, not safe in certain circumstances. It goes into in depth. It talks about the importance. Partners wanted to talk about finding a therapist and what they look for in a therapist.
But Yasmin, you're like at the top of the oppression hierarchy. You're like the queen of the oppression hierarchy.
Workshops about partners and sex and how a partner feels about different aspects of sex and intimacy once they learn that their partner needs to transition. And then we talk about celebrations because they come in different shapes and sizes, in small ways and big ways. And in that chapter, we also talk about celebrating how you answer inappropriate questions, because they're often a lot. I found that a lot of people talked about how often people who don't know about the transgender community and have very little experience talking to a partner of a person who's in transition or thinking along that line, they ask inappropriate questions because they don't want to ask the person who's questioning their gender. And so they often ask it of the partner. And so there's a lot about that in that chapter. And then taking the pulse of the relationship. Once the discussion about transitioning is not first and foremost in the relationship, because could be a very long period of time where a person's transition needs to take front stage and needs to be often discussed. But it's really important to remember that the partner is a big part of this process and that their voice matters and their needs matter along the way. Okay. Next slide. And so one of the things that partners talked about a lot was that the language, and if you come from a community or a place where you really don't have any experience with the language, some people still believe that the word queer is a negative word and come from a space because that's how they were raised, but that's been their experience. And so we talk about language, we talk about
she's a useful idiot.
Some people don't even know what LGBTQ plus stands for. They don't know what LGBTQIAA stands for. They don't know a lot of things about even that term. And so really.
Hang on, I want to say welcome to Living Fox Z. I just discovered you and can say your LGBT separating the Q division picture is perfect. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. And welcome to the channel. We hope you enjoy it. Sit back, relax, hang out. So this woman is a useful idiot that we're watching. I hope everyone is like seeing the difference. She's not a true believer. She got sucked into this ideology because her husband basically transitioned. And I really do. I feel for people in this position. I really do. This is not her fault. But like in the course of her coping with the fact that her husband decided apparently he was a woman, I'm assuming it was a male to a female, I don't know. But like this is her way of coping. She coped with this situation by saying, you know what? I am going to help other people who are in this situation. There actually is something kind of admirable about that. In kind of like a weird, messed up way. She doesn't know what she's supporting. I'm sure she has not made the connection of, oh, I'm supporting Marxism. The reason she's in this is because it personally impacted her life, and she's trying to do something good with it, okay? And so that's kind of like my position on her for right now. I don't think that she's actually a bad person. I don't think she knows what she's pushing, but I do think she's being a useful idiot for the queer ideology because she's using their talking points. And maybe someday she'll wake up and realize what she's doing. But there is something. I mean, I think it's easy to dismiss it like this and say, she's a grifter. She's obviously not a bad person. Sometimes when people go through traumatic experiences, they want to help other people who have been through those experiences. I promise you, she's not making money off of this. I wrote 2 books. You don't make money off of books, guys. You really don't. And you especially don't make money off of books like this. This book has an extremely small audience. She's not making any money off of this. My perception of this is that the book was a byproduct of her working through her own feelings about being in this situation. And I strongly doubt she's making any money at all. I think it's important to give people the benefit of the doubt. And I think, like, if your mind goes, "How dare they make money?" Like, why do you care if other people make money? I mean, honestly, why do we care if other people make money? What does it matter in your life at all? No one has to pay her money for anything. It's all voluntary. There are legitimate things to be upset about. I just don't think that this woman is one yet. I could be wrong, but I don't think we're there yet.
We talk in this all different definitions to help people, and then there's tons and tons of resources at the end of the book and different ways to get in touch with different organizations. Okay, next slide.
Dee, can I just interject for
It
Oh,
does,
I'd love
doesn't
it.
it?
Go right
It
ahead.
does.
I would
Yeah,
love it.
absolutely. So we have an individual that was asking that, saying that they don't necessarily have a partner, they're not necessarily a spouse, but what would be your advice on how to tell someone that you're interested in them about your transition and how to go about that in terms of a relationship?
I agree, everyday therapist. I
Well,
agree.
I'm a partner, so I mean, I'll answer what I would say, but I don't know if I'm the most qualified to answer that question, to be quite frank with you. It may be best for a person who is in transition to ask other people who have gone through that experience for themselves. I know that based on what partners have told me and those that I have, couples that I've spoken to, that when they were dating, some people chose to tell someone upfront about them in transition, or that they are transgender or non-binary. Others have felt it's no one's business until they got closer and they found it was the right time. I feel that it's important maybe to practice whatever you're going to say with someone ahead of time. It could be a therapist, could be, again, in a support group. I know that there are many of them out there. There are lots of things online where people speak about this. So I hope that I answered that question the best that I could. I really feel that it's a personal decision and a person needs to do what feels right for them. Again, it's not one size fits all, in my opinion.
Thank you. Yeah, that definitely helps. The individual replied that was helpful. Thank you.
I'm so happy. Thank you so much. That makes me feel so glad. Okay.
Oh, Corinne also chimed in, asking, like, an example, ask about how we can disclose that to a partner, like how, I'm gonna just read this word for word if that's okay.
Okay, sure.
An example is, I'm just reading this on the fly, I'm sorry. Like, as an example, my therapist said to practice ahead and then do it at a restaurant because people behave when in public. So kind of like, how do we disclose that? Like, and maybe what kind of settings? We maybe know that our partners are going to behave differently in different spaces.
You mean telling your partner that you're transitioning in a public place? Is that what you're
I think so. Yes.
That is such
that
is such a dirty trick. That is a dirty, dirty trick. You're gonna take your partner out for a nice dinner to tell them that you're trans and you're transitioning because you think they won't react badly in a restaurant? I'm sorry. If that's your big plan to trick your partner into accepting that you have lied to them for as long as you have been in that relationship, that seems like a horrible, horrible, horrible idea. If you cannot sit down on the living room couch and have a conversation with your partner who is supposed to be your partner about a major life change that you are springing on them, that is dirty and extremely emotionally manipulative.
Partner's feelings into account.
Taking the partner's what?
Like taking the partner's feelings into account. How do we disclose that to them in a way that they're gonna like best receive it?
Well, again, I really think this depends. This is really a question for therapists, but I'll do my best. Because what I would say to that, as based on experiences speaking to other partners, is that it really depends on the health of the relationship before.
You think?
And I think that this is something that is personal between two people. So I don't know if I would really feel that most people would want to hear something private about this if they have feelings about it in a public place.
A rare moment of clarity.
Go somewhere that it's safe for both of you, that you can hear each other well, where there's not noise and atmosphere behind you, that you're not shouting over something.
A rare moment of clarity. Murphy's Pool says, just told the wife I'm transitioning. Her response, no kidding. You've been working on growing I'm not saying that. For 10 years. Let me know when you're done. You married a good woman, Murphy's Pool. You did.
I would say really make sure that the next day that person the partner may not be as busy as they would have normally been in their schedule. So they need time to process it, that they can do it and have the next day or a few hours at least to do it.
Murphy's Pool's wife is a
saint. I would also say maybe have time that your partner was going, both of you might still have time like away somewhere. I think that it's important to ask the partner how they feel about this, and to sometimes the person who is in transition, they have been thinking about this for a really long time in different ways, and they've been processing maybe with a therapist. They have perhaps told a close friend. Maybe they've done some investigating online. They've read some books. And perhaps the partner has an idea because they've spoken about it in some ways. But sometimes they really don't know. That's why that second chapter is unexpected. And so it may be something that a person who's in transition is bursting with pride and joy and understandably so to share with someone. However, for their partner, it could be a little overwhelming, and at the same time, it can also be exciting, and it can be one or the other of both. So I think that respecting the importance of this kind of conversation by doing it somewhere private and not in a restaurant. Now, if the question also involves maybe once you know the person is in transition or is perhaps changing their pronouns to align with the pronouns that they should be using, that is what I'm saying should, meaning that they feel people should be using because it is the pronouns they use, that and they wanted to have it align with their firm gender. Sometimes the spouse is in a situation, I know that I write about this, that they're in a place where their spouse is being misgendered and the partner isn't sure what to do. And so I think it's in those situations, I feel that the people in the relationships, and I want to acknowledge that people are also in poly relationships, and that we always have to be aware that there's more than one type of configuration. We're not always in monogamous relationships, or we're dating many people, or People have open relationships, so we should acknowledge that. But right now I'm going to use it in terms of you with one person at a time, is that so if you're in a relationship with someone and they're misgendered, it's important that before you go to that restaurant or the public space, because maybe that's what was being asked as part of this question, is to discuss how you're going to handle if somebody misgenders someone. Are you going to repeat to the waiter, or like I always suggest if somebody misgenders someone and says she instead of he for a person, you might you might say, oh no, he would rather have that cooked rare, and say the pronoun in the conversation so the waiter or waitress or person would know, or use they if that's the pronoun, or whatever pronoun the person's name if that's their pronoun, and to be aware of when sometimes making I don't want to say the word is well, the first term that came to word making a scene. I can say that sometimes when a person means well and tries to help, they cause discomfort to a person who is in transition or transitioning. And so it's important to have this conversation prior on how you're going to handle being misgendered, a person being misgendered, if that should happen. And so if that happens in a public place, maybe that's part of what the question meant. But if you're going to share with somebody your journey and what you need from them, giving them the respect and grace to speak with them in a private place and setting it up where there's time the next day to process and maybe give them some resources. We don't know when I consent it. Okay. You know, and
if my husband, okay, I appreciate that the advice that has been given is don't go out to a restaurant and break the news. You do it in a private place. That's the correct advice. But I'm going to tell you this. If my husband sat me down and said, Carlin, I'm transitioning to be a woman, and then handed me a pamphlet to help me process my feelings about that, that would not end well for my husband. I'm telling you that right now. I would be living by myself in my house by the end of the night if my husband handed me a fucking so your husband has announced that he's a woman and is going to transition. If he handed me a fucking pamphlet, I'd be like, no.
to go ahead and do that.
Yeah, I think that's perfect. That definitely helps answer the question. Thank you so much.
Oh, sure, Bethany. Anything else, or should I go on? What would you prefer me to do?
You can keep going. Perfect.
Okay, so, and this might be some resources people might look to. There's these books, there's tons of them out there. So this one is called Families in Transition, and it is about parenting, but it is also a really important book because it has lots of different chapters and includes things with family dynamics. So I really recommend this book.
My husband introducing a hot guy into the relationship is an extremely different scenario, Autumn, than my husband cutting off his own penis. I like my husband's penis. I partially I married that part of him too. I don't want him cutting it off. This has nothing to do with what is being discussed. That last thing is going to get clipped out of context, by the way. But it's true. It's true. And I stand by it. This is not the same thing. Being in a polyamorous relationship or an open relationship or like a swinging or any of that nonsense is not the same thing as your spouse changing genders. It's true. I stand by it. I have no regrets. Hey, listen. All aspects are important when you choose to spend the rest of your life with someone, all right? If you don't like it, then don't marry it, is all I'm saying.
Love this book, The Arising Transgender Identity for Clinical Practice, a new model for understanding gender by S.J. Langer. it was one of the top 5 finalists for Lambda Literary for nonfiction in 2020, I believe it was 2020, and great book, wonderful for clinicians and for people who are really interested in an interdisciplinary way of approaching transgender identity, theorizing transgender identity. I think it was a wonderful book. There's another book called Sex, Sexuality, and Trans Identities, Clinical Guidance for Psychotherapists and Counselors. And
Victor's listening to
I'm
this
proud to
downstairs.
say
He's like,
that
oh
I
my
wrote a
God.
chapter in this book, and it was came out of doing a conference with PCGS.
These are the days that Victor regrets having a life that streams on the internet for a living.
And the chapter that I wrote is with Olivia Fisher, wonderful clinician. I interviewed dozens of partners on sex and intimacy, and then 5 partners agreed to have their part of the interview explained in depth in this chapter. And then another great resource is Trans Bodies and Trans Selves, a resource for the transgender community. And now I'm happy to tell you, I believe it's in December, the next version of this book is going to come out. And they asked me to write a short piece in it for partners. And so I'm very excited about this. And so you'll be hearing more about this. So it just so happens that it's coming out in December, and I got word about this week. Okay.
Awesome. I have a question regarding resources.
Sure.
I have an individual that asked about how to help their family navigate through transition, particularly with children.
Good question.
And how to best have those conversations and those discussions to help prepare their children for the next chapter of how their family looks. Can you recommend any resources or literature for that specific need to help a family transition?
I do think Families in Transition, I mean, that's the title of the book. So there are different parts of that. I also think going to support groups are really great, and speaking with other parents and going to, there's many conferences out there. I presented at many. The Philly conference is great. There's Gender Spectrum. There's tons. There's in New York City. There's tons and tons of resources out there for that. A specific book, this is one I recommend. There's lots of them by Diane Enterson. I would say her last name. I'm trying to think of how to say it. Whatever. Her work is great. I also would say there's another book out right now called, I feel bad, Diane, I'm apologizing. I don't know her well, but I don't know. But anyway, but her books are wonderful. And then there's He Was Always My Son by Janet Barkin. I'm going to be interviewing her on my YouTube monthly series. That would be a great book. So there are lots of resources out there. I mean, actually, the book I just mentioned, some of them are there when your child transitions, but as far as parents transitioning, I would say going to support groups, but I don't know as many as off the top of my head, I do not.
Oh, I want to show this chat from Everyday Therapist. Everyday Therapist says, I saw today that therapists are leaving the profession because they can't ethically be gender affirmative to all of the cases that are coming to them, even though they are being pressured to do so. The APA, the American Psychiatry or Psychiatric Association, has a whole training about how therapists are supposed to do gender affirming therapy. I haven't watched it yet, but I have it pulled up on my desktop. The APA and both the American Psychology Association and the American Psychiatric Association are so infiltrated at this point, it's ridiculous.
Thank you. No, that definitely helps. I think that we can keep going for now, Dee, and I'll let you know if anything else pops up.
Someone had a recommendation. Love lives here.
Oh, I'm sorry, I couldn't hear.
Someone had a recommendation. Love lives here. Okay.
Oh, yes, I see that. Yeah, I was also thinking about one. I tried to Google it really quick about a crayon. I think it's called Red.
Oh, the kids'
And
book.
it's about a crayon story.
It is.
Through transition and how it's really.
Red is about a crayon that is a blue crayon with a red jacket, but it's a blue crayon, and it's a story for like kindergarteners about accepting trans people.
I don't know if that makes sense. It's about a blue crayon mistakenly labeled as red suffers an identity crisis. That's the premise of the book. I feel like that's a good kind of children's book for like a younger child.
They read that book to kids in schools, by the way, starting I think in 1st or 2nd grade. Sometimes I guess probably in kindergarten, but definitely in 1st or 2nd grade they're reading that book. In fact, I found out about that book because I found a video on the Seattle Public Schools website of a health teacher that made videos reading books for trans and non-binary kids that are currently to this day on the Seattle Public Schools website, and that was one of the books that they wrote.
So, are you asking about children's books or books that explain a parent transitioning? I thought that's what you were asking me. I'm sorry, I might have misunderstood you.
I think probably either. I think both are probably helpful, but I think I think the question was more kind of stemmed as like, how do we talk to our child about this?
Oh, okay.
And
well,
so
then, that's a different question. I'm sorry, I misunderstood you.
No, it's okay.
So as far as resources for books, some that one I would really recommend, which is hold on one second, is you know what? I'll come back to that. Let's go forward, and then well, I would say one that's really great. Again, it's there's a lot of information in it by Eli Neely, and it's called Transgender Children and Youth, but it does explain a lot of information in there.
I was just looking at some of the other videos on this channel just for fun. They have a video. Oh God. They have a video on this channel that I kind of wish I had chosen to watch today. Maybe we'll even watch it after this as a special after party. Are you guys ready? Reading the Bible from a trans and non-binary perspective. They literally have a presentation on this channel titled Reading the Bible from a Trans and Non-Binary Perspective. Oh, God. I wasn't prepared for that either, Reagan. Oh, my word. As John Morgan would say, oh, my Lanta. Watch
if you
later.
Want children's books, I have a bunch of them mentioned in one by it's called Be Who You Are. Another, I Am Jazz. Stacy's Not a Girl. My Princess Boy. Again, it's more geared around children who are in transition. So are you a boy?
No, that's really helpful.
Maybe we'll do that. Maybe we won't do it tonight, but we'll do it as like a Sunday special stream for God. We will honor the Lord by talking about reading the Bible from a trans and non-binary perspective. Listen, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to be as blasphemous as I possibly can be. Like, moments like this don't come around every day. Dub, I just saw the weirdest horror movie with Kevin Bacon as a leader of a camp to change gay kids. You know, I saw that movie and it was everything I hoped it would be.
Tinker for Boys. All right, I gave you a few. Okay, so we go to the next
Thank
slide.
you.
If you want to go to the next one. All right, so I feel that when one of the things that was very important to partners when I spoke with them was that they wanted to have affirmations, anecdotal affirmations that really spoke to them, and that was about their journey, and that to do some writing about that. So I created 90 affirmations, almost like it would have been like we might see them on like a calendar sometimes if you were to get one of those calendars that you like pull off. I'm showing my age there. But it's just like daily readings, but they're embedded inside the book, embedded. And then they wanted to have some areas, so I created vital vignettes where it explains specific information about different things that partners may go through or know other partners have gone through. Then they wanted to have ways and exercises, which we can get to whenever we want to, graphics galore to explain different ways to navigate the transition, but not just in the written form, but do it through different types of Venn diagrams or web, or doing it through games, which learning vocabulary. I have lots and lots of games. There's a whole area that does do reflective responses, which is just in the narrative form. Then there's a section about how to distress, because there are many things that happen in people's lives that during not just, life is going on while people are in transition. So I talk about different ways to distress. There's an empathy embracing exercises, which helps a partner, maybe look at the transition through the lens of their partner who's in transition, or different ways that they've been able to adjust to learning different things in their life that they might not have looked at the same way before. And there's sample shares of lots of partners who answered the different reflective responses, and their samples are all different stages of their partners in all different stages of transitioning. And then there's a couple communication corner where there's exercises for partners and the couple to do with each other and to ask each other, but it's led by the partner. Okay, we go to the next slide. So this is one of the affirmative anecdotes or anecdotal affirmation. What scares me most? What worries me most? How can I take care of me? How can I take care of we? So an exercise I'd like to do for a moment is, would it be possible for people maybe to take a moment to think about when they go to bed at night, what might be something right now in relation to the transition that keeps them awake at night, that worries them, and they have a hard time falling asleep, and maybe we can share some of that. Because the part that is embedded in this anecdotal affirmation is that sometimes the partner loses sight of taking care of themselves, and they're very in tune with taking care of the family and the people involved in the transition, and not necessarily on their own wants and needs, and that gets put on the shelf sometimes. So what worries them, that keeps them up at night?
These are not, well, I guess anecdotes, I suppose, but this is like using mindfulness in like a little bit of an insidious way, and I don't like it. Okay, let me read this. I don't know if she's going to. It says, in 2010, I learned that my partner of more than 17 years needed to transition. I question the use of the word needed, but okay. I had no idea what this meant or how it would affect my relationship and my life. That being said, no one is more surprised than I that one day I would have both the clarity and opportunity to share what I have learned from the experience of loving a person who began to transition while we were together. My greatest hope is that my journey and the journeys of those who have so bravely shared their stories with me will bring you, the partner, a sense of comfort and the knowledge that you are not alone. I want to emphasize that anything I voice is simply my path combined with the stories of others, and it is not intended to suggest that your path will necessarily be the same as mine or anyone else's. I mean, again, I think that this woman is coming from a good place of like, something traumatic happened to me. I married someone who lied to me for the first 17 years we were together. And if you find yourself in this position, I've been down that road. I know where it goes. Let me help you. I think it comes from a positive place, and I think it's important to acknowledge positive intentions. But I also don't think that I don't think I don't think it's a good idea to pressure anyone to feel like they have to accept that the person they married is now turning into a completely different person, and that should be something that they just go along with no kind of like reaction to it.
So,
That's the question I really wanted to answer. Weren't you angry? Weren't you angry that your husband of 17 years lied to you that entire time that you were together? Didn't you feel betrayed? I mean, it's weird, isn't it? It's kind of like this is like a cult. It's like you're just going to be okay with the fact that your husband has now decided that he doesn't want to be your husband anymore after 17 years? I mean, I might stop short like okay, maybe I won't. I If my husband did this to me, I'll be married for 12 years in November. If my husband did this to me, I'll tell you what, he wouldn't need to get transition surgery because I would cut off his damn balls myself. That's how angry I would be with this.
Can we share some of these out,
Yeah.
or do you just want to leave them, Dee?
Yeah, you can share some out, but I'll respond to some I read already myself. It's very, very common, partners in the privacy of the workshops often talk about the fear of their partner wanting to leave them, and that not being attracted to them, and then their partner in transition can also be worried about that. And this sometimes gets wrapped into grieving and fear and the part of the unknown. People talk about the fear of violence, of something happening to their partner, and they're not able to be there for them.
The first thing they're worried about is that something bad might happen to their partner because they transition. I'm sure that's the very first. But honey, won't those big bad transphobes get you? That's the first thing you're worried about? Okay.
Um, we know this happens. I'm reading a book right now, and it's about a parent whose child is in transition, but it happens all the time for partners. Having their partner go into a bathroom, it can be terrorizing, and really scary. It can be walking down the street. It can be going into a clothing store. It can be getting your hair cut or done. It can be going to a family function. It can be traveling. It can be getting on a plane. It can be going through security. It can be at any time. It can be going to a doctor's office. there's a lot of fear that's wrapped around that can have the potential of violence, and what to do and how to handle that. And we talk about this a lot in our workshop. Okay. Do you see
Victor is
others
definitely
here?
not low testosterone, confirmed.
Yeah, I just wanted to chime in too. I mean, I feel like as a spouse myself, I can say that I've experienced all these feelings that are being shared. So they're all very valid.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Wait.
And also,
So wait. This person is also married to someone who transitioned? It would be humiliating. But the humiliation of it would actually be the thing that I'd be worried about the least, if I'm honest about it. Again, it's like, for me, this is about the lying and the betrayal.
not knowing if depending on the partner's, the spouse's sexual fluidity, if they will be attracted to their spouse once the spouse transitions, and how will the configuration be for intimacy and sex. Very scary how it will affect. Someone wrote something about having a child with special needs and how to navigate all of that and explain that. Again, I really believe that the best answer to this is to go to some type of couples counseling and to get some professional help with people who have experienced that type of thing. Also, another thing that people talk about is partners, is about trauma. That sometimes when their partner transitions, that they themselves might have had trauma with the someone of the same gender that the spouse is transitioning to, and that can trigger a lot of emotions in a partner who might have had some type of abuse or trauma in their life with a person who's gendered, how their partner may present now, non-binary even too. So that it's really important that mental health professionals, if you find you're having a hard time, get involved, you seek that out. Any other questions that you see, Bethany?
I think that we can keep going.
Okay, so we have probably like 15 minutes to go. So we can go to the next slide.
I want to see the exercises.
So this was just a vignette, and not just a vignette, explains a lot of what I said, but most of what is shared in this book is based on, my greatest hope is that the journey and the journeys of those who have so bravely shared their stories with me will bring you, the partner, a sense of comfort and knowledge that you are not alone. I want to emphasize that anything that I voice is simply my path combined with the stories of others, and is not intended to suggest that your path will necessarily be the same as mine or anyone else's. And I think that if there's one takeaway from this, is that no one can tell anybody what to do. There'll be lots of people who will give their opinion, but in the end, you have to make the decision that feels right and whole and best for yourself. And then create a support system that can help you along the way with that. Okay, go to the next slide. So these are the type of exercises that are in the book. So
what artifact does your trans-identified partner want removed that you do not want taken down or put out of view? Oh, you mean like a wedding photo, perhaps? Are they going to start screaming that the wedding photo makes them feel gender dysphoria or something, and they don't want the wedding photo up? Or the honeymoon photos? Or any pictures with the kids in which they are a different gender? I mean,
suggestions.
Father's Day gifts. Yep, Father's Day gifts. Mother's Day gifts, I suppose, too.
is that what artifacts does your trans-identified partner want removed that you do not want put, taken down or put out of view. And so in the middle, you write down what that item is, and then the outside, all the different reasons why you don't want it to be taken down. Or some people just choose to use this exercise that they put the word artifact in the middle, and then they list all the different artifacts. And then they talk about their partner, and they have communicate about the reasons why each one of them might want the things to be in view. For instance, wedding pictures. It could be trips. It can be different types of holiday occasions like maybe Thanksgiving or different types of things. It could just be a nice picture that you both like that you're in, but it makes your partner who's in transition or transition, in the transition process doesn't want that up anymore. And your feelings about that, because some people feel that their history is being erased also. And so it's a really important conversation.
Their history
Okay,
is
next
being
slide.
erased. So how do you work through that?
So these are some of the.
So she's not giving any who wins? Do you automatically just have to take everything down that the trans person doesn't want anymore, or else they're going to throw a hissy fit? Reflexive responses for friends and family. Which friends and family members will you tell about the transition alone? Which friends and family members will you tell about the transition together? What, where, and how will you tell family members and friends about the transition? How do you believe the transition will impact your children, nephews, nieces, or grandchildren? Do you want the friends or family members of either of your lists to support you during any medical interventions and/or social changes? How will they know? Are there people who you absolutely do not want to know about the transition? Sorry, the type is really small. Does this mean that you cannot tell certain people because of concerns that these people would find out? Who and why?
Reflective questions, so I'm just going to throw out one of them because of time. What, where, and how do you both tell family members and friends about the transition? So some people choose to tell people alone, some people choose to do together, some people decide to say that they're going to have a priority order in which they tell people, and some people decide that they're not going to make an announcement. I know other people who made a video and then they just sent it to everyone that they love and care about. And so it really is an individual thing. And it's also up to you on how much you want family members as well as your partner, to be involved with any medical aspects of the transition or social aspects of the transition, maybe going clothes shopping with someone, or maybe going with them to a doctor's appointment. You might be more comfortable having a family member that do that than a spouse, or a spouse may not want to go, or you might not want your spouse to go with you. Okay, next slide. So this is just an example of deserving distressing delights, and one is all about pampering and nurturing and self-care. It could be something as basic as taking a nap during the day. It can be as far as you can get a massage. It can be about going out to a nice restaurant by yourself. The point is to make sure that you put yourself on the list, especially during the time that you're navigating your spouse's transition. Next slide. And so this exercise is one of the empathy embracing exercises, and it's called Walk a Mile in My Shoes, and it's really focusing on gender dysphoria and how that can impact a relationship. And it gives the spouse who's not in transition the opportunity to view what it might be like to live in the body that does not align with who you are. It's very hard to actually understand what this would be like. I want to emphasize that there can be more than one person in a relationship in transition, and that both of them can still have different feelings and thoughts about their partner being in transition, because I just said the person who's in transition, but sometimes both people, or if it's poly relationship, many of the people in the relationship could be in transition. And that it should not be automatically assumed that because you are a person who is in transition, you're comfortable with everything about your partner transition. transitioning. Okay, we can go to the next slide. And so this is a sample share. And so one of the partners answered the question for themselves. And so they lived, I've been out as a lesbian for almost 20 years. This is in the book. And when my partner transitioned, and I feel rooted in my queer identity, being femme, though often masked my queerness, and sometimes my partner was mistaken for a man. So sometimes I felt I passed as straight, while still living with the fear of homophobic violence.
Well, people in the chat are saying that this feels like a mourning of a deceased loved one. It is grieving. It is grieving. The person that you married is quite literally disappearing. And even worse than that, it's like, it's not even that they died. It's not that they lived a good and like happy life and they died, right? It was that they were snuffed out. Or an even greater mindfuck, and anyone who has ever had a narcissist in their life will understand what I'm talking about. They never existed in the first place. I think that's probably one of the biggest mindfucks of all, isn't it? It's like not only did this person lie to me for so long, but the person that I married never existed in the first place. I think in some ways this is a lot harder. It would be like their entire life was a lie. Their entire relationship was a lie.
Transitioning, I sometimes avoid using gender terms so that I don't have to feel like I am deceiving people. In other words, I am afraid of identifying myself as straight by gendering my partner as male because I feel like it is a lie, or not the whole truth. I have gained privilege to gain. I have gained the privilege to identify as straight if I want to, which is more privilege than I had before for sure. And
I have gained the privilege of identifying as straight if I want to, which is more privilege than I had before. That if this is what your reflection is, that I've transitioned and now I have privilege because I can identify as straight, that is someone who has been indoctrinated into an ideology. If this is really this is not real, guys. I hope people see how plastic this is, right? This is not a real reflection. Anytime you're like, by transitioning, I have gained straight privilege that I did not have before. That is not a real and genuine reflection about the situation that they find themselves in. Those are people who have been brainwashed into a cult.
It's a powerful feeling, but I feel both ends of the spectrum have been padded, my privilege and my oppression, because my fear of violence against my family is heightened by the state of oppression that trans communities are under right now. It feels like I went back 20 years and I'm educating people all over again, except this time around on transgender issues. So there's all different types of views and experiences that are shared in the sample share. Okay, we can go to the next one. And this is the couple communication corner. And so these are the type of, this is in the chapter 12 about partners and sex. And how will sexual attraction, I'm going to do the fourth question, how will sexual attraction play a role in your relationship? And both people will answer this question and talk about this. And this question is ever evolving. It's a very important question. And how, number three, like, will you or what, will the use or use of toys or role play or
Oh
or
my
games play
God.
a part of your sex and your intimacy? It can be, or you can have an open, is the relationship be monogamous or open or polyamorous or any other type? To really have these conversations, because this is something that is really challenging sometimes for some couples, and it's important to have the conversation. Okay, next slide. So I'm excited to say that I am part of a group of people who will put together, it's called the Partner Conference. It's happening on Saturday, December 4th from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and 7 to 3 Pacific Time and Standard Time. And this conference is virtual. It's for and by partners of folks who identify as trans,
Oh,
non-binary, or
good.
questioning their gender.
Oh, good. I'm so glad to know that there are so many people that stuff like this impacts, that there is now an entire conference for this. For and by partners of folks, FOLX, who identify as trans, non-binary, and/or are questioning their gender. Mental health and medical providers are welcome to attend as well. However, they will have a separate breakout room. The conference that solely focuses on the needs, feelings, and voices of those in relationships when someone who identifies on the transgender spectrum.
Mental health professionals and medical providers are welcome to attend, but they're going to have their own separate breakout groups. There's a wonderful team of people that are going to be presenters. I'm honored to say that I was asked to be the one who is the keynote speaker. It will be a different type of presentation than this because it'll be really only for partners. And the conference solely focuses on the needs, feelings, and voices of those in the relationship with someone who identifies on the transgender spectrum. Content will be based on topics that were important to the partners and to help provide a place for partners for navigating their own journey. So you can go to thepartnerconference@gmail.com, thepartnerconference@gmail.com, and just say that you're interested in information about this. And somebody from the team will get back to you. And I think from now to November 6th is like early enrollment because there's a fee, there's different pay scales. So just check it out. Okay, and next slide. This is the cover of Sex, and I already showed you that one, so you can go on. I haven't realized I put it in the slide. And again, if you want to get in touch with me, these are the books.
Or Q&A or something.
And if you're
yeah, there's got to be a Q&A. There's still like 10 minutes left.
And see some of the monthly series that I do now. It's called Reflective Conversations on Gender Transition, an educational interview series.
Well, this is a really good question. How many spouses have to deny their real feelings in order to fit in at that conference? I wonder how much of this is similar to white privilege style training. I mean, it kind of seems like it is, isn't it? It kind of seems like, I mean, and it's even more severe than that though, because like I remember taking those white privilege classes like a couple of years ago, just for like, you know, shits and giggles to see what they were about, right? And you know, I could have, it was all nonsense, and it's all designed to make you feel like guilty and make you feel like you have to comply. But the difference between that and this is, I'm not married to someone who's pushing this on me. I didn't enter into a relationship with someone who was pushing this on me against my will, against my knowledge, against any of these things. I bet you every single person that goes to these conferences is like, I need to, if I leave my partner, that means I'm a transphobe. I can't do that. I'm a good person. I love them. And they probably want them desperately to come back to, and they probably desperately want this to not be real. And it's like, they're probably trying to do the right thing, but it's also, I wonder how many of them have to go the rest of their lives suppressing all of the, what I think are really natural feelings about having their partner lie to them.
And it's for every month, we rotate every few months on speaking just to partners, speaking to parents and family members, speaking to educators.
How many people are involved in this, that they're doing all this stuff?
Or, have advocacy groups. So any other questions? I'll be happy to take them.
Yeah, so I have one question that was asked earlier. The question was, how can I best support my spouse when they're experiencing dysphoria?
Great question. I mean, all the questions have been really powerful in the comments, I have to say. I wish we had more time to even delve into them more. So
Hang on. Milo says, and I think you're right about this, Milo, this is training on how to be an abuse victim. That's why it doesn't feel good to watch this. The woman doing this is a victim of this. She's not a bad person. This is a massive cope because she is a victim of abuse. Everyone involved in this is a victim of abuse. I'm sorry. Again, I don't care that people are trans. I have great sympathy for people who find themselves in that position. But dragging other people into it is so unfair.
Gender dysphoria, I think that what's important is to ask your spouse what they feel they need. Sometimes certain body parts are off limits when you're intimate. Sometimes using vocabulary while you're intimate helps the partner feel that more aligned with their body. It is important to also talk about what ways it's affecting them. Is it being misgendered that brings up a lot for the gender dysphoria? Is it how they feel when they're moving in their body? Is it doing specific activities? Is it when they're around their children? Are they feeling that they're, how to handle how people perceive if they're the biological parents of their child or not, or ask inappropriate.
Yuri, who is trans, says, true, I always ensure all romantic partners are aware of it. Otherwise, I'm beginning the relationship on the foundation of a lie. Listen, I'm sure that's not always like the most comfortable conversation to have in the beginning, and I'm sure not everyone wants to be dating a trans person. However, the reality is that if you're trans, like, you're there's not going to be a time when you're not trans. And so lying to people to get them to go along with it, to get them to be in a relationship with you, is going to come back to bite you eventually. There are a lot of people out there that legitimately don't care. You know? I really do believe that most people are like on the Kinsey scale. They're like some variation of bisexual, right? Maybe they're almost exclusively like homosexual or almost exclusively heterosexual, fine. But I also think that I really think we live in a time when most people like, you know, a lot of people don't care if you're trans. Some do, for sure, but those aren't people you want to be with anyway. And so why are you starting out the relationship on a lie to begin with? It just makes no sense. We may need that Bible video. I don't know if I can do it today. I'm like already depressed. I want to save it for Sunday when I get the most bang for your buck. Yeah, I date a lot of bisexual women to avoid rejection. 80% are good. Exactly. When you're doing your online dating profile, check off bisexual. I mean, I'm sure there are options for this now. Not that I think you should be online dating, by the way, because online dating is basically a tool of the devil. But online dating always ends up with whack jobs. It's a bad idea. Milo says this training should be how, as a partner, you have zero responsibility to stay with them, zero responsibility to participate in their decision or their delusions. I agree. And if you want to stay with them, great. But I don't think there should be any pressure. Like, you were brought into a relationship on false pretenses. You have no obligation to it.
Questions around that.
And it's also a really narcissistic thing to do, to be honest, to bring someone into a relationship on false pretenses. It's incredibly narcissistic.
There's always a gender dysphoria. It can be in social settings, it could be in intimate settings, it could be emotional. It's from what I understand, a person who's cisgender can never really understand what it feels like to be navigating and understanding your own gender in the process of figuring out your gender identity and your gender expression. People who cisgender maybe with certain aspects of things, but not if you identify in the transgender spectrum or, including non-binary. And so gender dysphoria is real. It's a feeling. It's an understanding inside that kind of like a betrayal of a person's body. And so it can cause a lot of suicidal thoughts and depression. It can also, when a partner is being close or intimate with their spouse who is experiencing gender dysphoria, some partners have shared that they themselves can feel rejected or that their partner doesn't want to be with them. But it can really be not about the partner that they're about to be intimate with, it's about themselves. So conversation, some people bring in toys in intimacy settings, some people, there's all different ways to address this. But I think if you are feeling this and you feel comfortable to talk a person who's in transition or experiencing this for themselves, to express it to their partner and let it in. Sometimes it's hard to find the words. I do know that. Any more questions? I'd love to have some. Well, thanks for putting that flyer up. That's very kind of you. If you roll it up a little, I don't know if you can, you'll see that Paula has been so instrumental in this, and Denise, and now we have some other people coming. When I get off of this, I have a meeting with a group of people who are going to be additional presenters. So I'm excited to say there'll be a lot more diversity, BIPOC, and a lot more diversity than.
Okay, so check this out. We have Denise here. Let me shut off the closed captions for a second. Denise, the spouse of a trans woman, draws from her own personal experience to provide compassion support to those who have whose loved ones have stated their need to transition and or explore their gender. Denise also looks kind of trans to me, if I'm honest about it. So I'm not sure that Denise is really, kind of like the best person to be talking to people about this, if I'm honest. And then Paula, the presenter of the partner of Paula, also the partner of a trans man, also looks rather trans herself, is an international ally and advocate who works to create spaces for transgender, gender nonconforming communities and their loved ones by providing supportive services. Why is it that so many trans people are getting married to each other without knowing that their partners are trans? Or alternatively, they got married, the partner knew they were a trans person, and then later the partner also decided they were trans? What is the likelihood of that? Does that seem like an astronomically small likelihood that that might happen? This is a sexual fetish. I'm sorry. What she's talking about, what these people are doing with their partners, this is a sexual fetish. This is not real. I'm sorry. I don't mean any disrespect, but this is not, it is not statistically possible that this is all gender dysphoria.
Is shown just in this our fiction. As we of us keep saying, we're going to throw more people on the poster. Anything else, Bethany?
I think we hit most of the questions in the chat.
Go ahead, ask me.
I don't know if I see any more. Someone asked if there's conferences in Canada, and wasn't sure of the answer of that one.
Well, you mean
I feel like we hit most of them.
Well, there is one in Vancouver that happens on the west side of Vancouver. That one's great. There's also one of our presenters is from Canada, and she's a great resource, Denise. And so we are going at the partner conference. There is going to be people from all around the world attending. I don't know if that'll help. Be asking for partner one. I think
Sure.
there's two more.
Another question that was asked was, I'm so sorry, my 2-year-old is right next to me. Do we ask therapists, how do we look for a therapist? How do we know if they're going to be able to help us with what we're experiencing in the LGBTQ kind of realm?
Great. We have to see how cute you should come up. Maybe we shouldn't keep their privacy, but just say hi. I'll answer that question for you right now. Finding a therapist is very, very important. And so what I would say is that WPATH, the World Professional Association for Trans Health, has a mentorship program for therapists and mental health professionals. And I would really recommend that if a person is interested in working with partners of people who are trans or non-binary or some questioning their gender, that they go to a therapist that has been trained. And just because a person has had experience with working with gay couples doesn't mean that they're necessarily aware of how to work and help people who have specific needs and circumstances that they need to discuss that have to do with partners of people who are in transition. And so it's very important that a person does not think, they understand that there's a difference between gender and sexuality, and that people's needs, trans couples, couples that, some couples call themselves trans couples. So I use that term for people sometimes. I don't use that term for myself, but that's okay. And I respect those that do. And so that there are couples therapists that they really ask them. I mean, I give people like some of the, there's a matching vocabulary game in the 5th chapter of my book, the first book, word search. And I say, here's a sheet, answer these questions. I ask somebody what, I would suggest, and I mentioned to people when it might help them find a therapist, or they do it, when I used to do that more often, I don't do it now, is to say to somebody, what's stealth mean? What's the difference between transgender and non-binary? Come ask some of the vocabulary. If a person is familiar with the community, they will know. I also wanted to say that if you are working with a therapist that is not familiar with the trans community, I'm not recommending that you stop working with a therapist. That's not my business or my place, because there are plenty of therapists out there that might not be familiar, but are willing to go for training and willing to learn along the line with you as you are growing. But the point is that the partner does not need to educate the therapist. The therapist should come already with the tool set to help the partner. And, it's just like as a classroom teacher, we wouldn't go in and teach a lesson and ask the students to teach us the lesson. They teach us lessons, but you know what I mean. And that it is our it is the therapist's responsibility to read books, to stay up on things, and to do their homework, so that a partner and a couple feel safe, and a person who's in transition and questioning their gender. I hope I answered that correctly. Ask them, interview them. And it's okay if it feels wrong, leave. And if you, have a conversation with that person and tell them, listen, this is upsetting me, this is bothering me, be candid. And always make sure that you get your needs met. And yes, the LGBTQ Center, there's lots of places that have lists of therapists. Again, sometimes it's hard now to find a therapist. So ask others, ask people who they go to, who they would recommend. Also, recommendations are great. And different forms of therapy. We always think that, one type of therapy, people go to art therapy. That's great. Music therapy. There's all different types of ways to explore your needs and your process. And there's plenty of people out there. Somebody said that they live in Atlanta, Georgia, and Paula, who's one of our presenters, she's from that area too. So again, go on groups and ask people in your area who therapists or center that they might get people from. Hope I answered that.
Perfect. Thank you.
Sure. So sweet. Thank you. Thank you so much.
I feel like we kind of hit most questions unless there's any other last minute ones. And Dee, we really appreciate you being here tonight and sharing your knowledge. I'm particularly excited about the teacher workbook because I actually have a non-binary student in my classroom this year. And it's very difficult handling that as an educator as opposed to in my personal life. So I'm excited to get my hands on that.
Oh, thanks.
So
I just came from a training in Virginia, and I trained like a whole school district in Charlottesville, and we're continuing now. And, the high school I trained. And it is very important. And I say that, something that's very important is that a lot of things in schools are gendered. And that if we're really aware, we show role model students who are non-binary. I know this isn't about that. Another time, if you want me to talk about that, I can go on.
Yes,
and on
no, I'm sorry.
And again, I apologize for the children. But I'm not sure. I didn't know if you wanted children's book. I have to practice saying that last name out loud because I always have a challenge with it. But we all know everybody has a challenge with some things, and me, it's sometimes saying last names properly. So.
Yeah.
I hope this is helpful to somebody. And the goal of everything that I do, and I mentioned this earlier before we got on, is that we want to help save the lives of those who are identifying on the transgender spectrum, our spouses.
She is literally subordinating herself to this. Our goal is to save their lives. Everything we do is to be about saving their lives. Because they are the ones that are poor and abused and oppressed, not us, the ones who were lied to for God knows how long. They are the ones who are oppressed.
Our children and our students, and that everything that I do is to help a person stay alive. And if I can be of service in some way and help save somebody's life to be part of that process, then everything's worth it. My day's complete.
Absolutely. I 100% agree.
Day, right? I said, right. If you had a good day, it's a good day if you helped save somebody's life.
For sure. And Dee, thank you so much for being here tonight. Thank you again for sharing your knowledge. Thank you to all of you that took the time out tonight to join. Again, there's lots of resources on the Pennsylvania Trans Equity page. Also, on that page, there's more information about our monthly spouses meetup, which is the second Tuesday at 7:30 Eastern Standard Time. And either Corinne or I can get you the link for that. And we hope that this is helpful in some way. And we hope that everybody has a great night and that we'll see you again at a future workshop. Thank you so much, everyone.
All right, guys.
Thank you. Have a beautiful evening, everybody.
I guess that's all for this presentation. I'm going to be honest. I don't know if I can stomach another one tonight. So we might only go 2 hours on this stream for a change, but that was really depressing. It was really depressing. It was like watching that was just as depressing for me as it was like when we're watching like kids get groomed on the internet. It's like I don't know how to quite put it into words what it was like to watch that, but it was like these people really, I don't want to say they have no self-respect, but that's kind of what it feels like. It's like they have no self-respect. They don't feel like they're worthy of someone who isn't going to lie to them in order to get into a relationship with them. Melissa says, I've been married for 28 years. Love is more than a fetish. It is more than a fetish. And again, I don't know that people who haven't been married can understand this as well as people who have been, but it's like the fact that these people are doing conferences to try to help people cope with the fact that their partners have lied to them, their partners who have been sucked into this ideology too, most of the time, I'm sorry, it's a sexual fetish. I'm sorry. I'm going to say it. It's a sexual fetish. Because you know that most of the time this is happening, this is a man transitioning to a woman. It's not usually a woman transitioning to a man, it's a man transitioning to a woman. Do not deliberately misinterpret my words, Autumn. I already blocked your other account. I'll block this one too. No one deserves to be deceived and lied to by the person that they committed their life to. No one deserves this. And if it ever does happen that you find yourself in this type of position, I hope you love and care about yourself enough to know that you do not have to subordinate yourself to someone else's sexual fetish. I'm not necessarily suggesting that the best thing to do is to leave them in all circumstances, although that absolutely should be an option that's on the table. But I won't tell people to leave their marriage if they don't want to. Like, that's your choice. But to think that the only responsibility of the spouse in this situation is to support their trans spouse so that they don't literally die. Well, I'm sorry. No. No. It's okay to be angry. It's okay to be furious. It's okay to grieve what you've lost. It's okay to be really pissed off that people are putting you in this position in the first place. And by the way, I am just as fed up with people on the internet who are either too stupid to interpret what's being said, who are deliberately misinterpreting it just to cause shit. That is pissing me off almost as much. So, I don't really have anything else to say on this one, guys. I really don't. That was really depressing to watch, but I'm glad that we did. I'm glad that we watched it and saw what was going on and saw how these problems are handled when they happen. Yeah, I don't really have anything else to say. That one's gonna have to simmer for a while. But even though we are done for today, we will be back tomorrow at 6 p.m. for Socialism Saturday. I don't know what we're watching yet, but hopefully it's something that is, well, a little bit more lively, a little bit more entertaining. It will certainly be at least just as dystopian, if not more. But yeah, I'm gonna go and decompress. I'm gonna watch a movie or something. I'm gonna go do some knitting. I'm just gonna relax for my evening. But guys, thank you for joining me for happy hour today. I really do appreciate it. Again, please make sure you mount that like button on the way out the door. Please make sure you are subscribed to the channel if you are not already. I will see you tomorrow at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. Jen says, virtual peach pie beer for Dr. K. You know, it's funny that you said that, Jen. I almost bought a peach pie beer today, no joke. And I was like, I don't really like peach pie, but maybe it'll be good in a beer. So I was this close, and I was like, Carlin, you really don't like peach pie, but I like the idea of peach pie anyway. Thanks for the super chat, Jen. I really appreciate it. All right, guys, that's all we have for today.